Today, guys, I'm going to be talking about the stats and the ability, and then show you guys gameplay 2 of the Evolved Goblin Barrel coming out in the month of June. So, first things first, this is going to be a 2-cycle evolution. Now, what's interesting is the stats are going to be pretty much the same as the regular Goblin Barrel, or actually worse, but they're pretty similar overall because the Decoy Barrel, which is the ability, the Goblins deal the same amount of damage, but they only have 40% of the health. Now, the way the Decoy Barrel works is you throw the Evolved Goblin Barrel on one tower, the main one, and then on the opposite tower is the one where the decoy's at, and you are unable to know which one is which, so you kind of have to guess, and sometimes you might get unlucky and predict the spell on the wrong one, which means you're going to end up taking a lot of damage. Before we get into the games, I think there's one important thing to note here. Even though the stats are very similar between the regular goblins and the decoy ones, you can see the hit speed, the damage, and the DPS are all the same. But look at the massive difference between the hit points. 202 hit points, which the normal goblins have, compared to the decoy goblins, which only have 81 hit points. And you know what has exactly 81 hit points too? These skeletons. So that's a good thing to remember, which means they're going to get one-shotted by things like towers, and also the zap will be able to take out the decoy goblins. However, if someone has a tank down, tanking for the decoy goblins, you will still have to respond to them because they're dealing just as much damage as the regular goblins. Alright guys, let's get into a couple games now to test it out. So in the first game, it's going to be played in a double barrel bait deck. I figured double barrel bait might pair well with the Evolved Goblin Barrel because it's easier to do split lane pushes potentially compared to just regular log bait. And then of course the Inferno pairs very well with the Goblin Barrel. And in the second game, I'm going to use a log bait deck with the Tesla because recently Tesla has also been played so much with bait. So I guess we'll see in the upcoming month if Inferno or Tesla ends up being better inside of bait decks. Now, I'm not super sure how OP the Decoy Barrel is going to be, especially because it is a 2-cycle evolution. So you actually need to use 2 regular Goblin Barrels before you have the Evolved one. And on top of that, there's already a lot of other strong evolutions inside of bait too. Of course, the Evolved Knight, in the Evo Skellies, Evolved Tesla, very good inside of bait, so people might prefer to use those in bait over the Evolved Goblin Barrel, especially if it ends up not being super OP in comparison. The other flaw I feel like of the Evolved Goblin Barrel is because it's a 2-cycle Evo, it's not really going to be good in beatdown at all. You're pretty much only going to see it in bait, decks that traditionally already use the Goblin Barrel, so it doesn't really open doors for new decks to come into the game, if that makes sense. Whereas with the Evolved Barbarians, which are 1-cycle Evo, you saw those fit very well inside of beatdown, which I just feel like is not going to be the case as expected with the barrel. It's only exclusively going to be in bait, which is why I'm showing a game here where both players have bait, because I think that's kind of what you're going to expect with it. So Skelly Barrel coming in here, a little bit of damage is going to have to be taken, but Evo Skellies are going to clean up really nicely, maybe counter push coming in with them, and then here we go, the Decoy Barrel, one in the left, one in the right, and as you guys can see, it didn't end up doing anything too significant, and I think that's the case sometimes where it's kind of going to be one of those, I feel like, situational evolutions where it really depends whether it's going to get value or not. It's not going to be, for example, like the Evolved Knight, where it's going to be getting value every single time, because if you don't have a tank in front of the Decoy Barrel, then you're not really going to get a whole lot out of it. It can pretty much just be ignored. So you're going to have to make sure you have the proper push setup. So here we go. Decoy Barrel coming in. On the left lane's the decoy, the right, the actual one. And you can see on the left, because there was nothing in front of the decoy, it just pretty much got taken out without any elixir having to be committed on it. And that is, I feel like, often going to be the case if you don't support it well. So just from this first game and just from what I've seen so far with the Evolved Goblin Barrel, I do think it might end up being one of the weakest evolutions in the game, especially because of how good the Dagger Duchess is. I think that's also kind of a problem for it as well, because everyone's using that over the Princess Tower nowadays, and of course the Duchess is known for being a lot better against it because of her rapid fire. She's going to be quite good against baity cards. So that's going to be kind of another problem for the Evo barrel as well. Evo Skellies here on top of the Evolved Knight, going to accumulate like crazy, might be a really nice counter push opportunity. Skelly barrel coming in with the Evo Skellies on the back end. Princess might be able to take them out, but I don't know if she's going to be able to. Decoy barrel coming in. As you can see, like, it didn't really do much because the left lane isn't really the lane you're going for. So it's like, I just feel like it's very situational. But anyway, the second game here, like I mentioned, game 2, log bait deck with the Tesla, and I actually figured it would be good to show you guys a game where the Goblin Barrel's in a deck that's not a bait deck. So I figured P.E.K.K.A. would be kind of interesting. I mean, even though P.E.K.K.A. doesn't really pair well with the Goblin Barrel, it's kind of a mid-laddery deck, something you might see on mid-ladder, Goblin Barrel, P.E.K.K.A., something random like that, or sometimes you'll maybe get Hog Goblin Barrel, but like I already said, I really don't think it's going to be that good inside of non-bait decks, but I mean, you guys will see how it goes here in this game. So regular Goblin Barrel coming in. Always good to try to send it in, of course, when the Duchess isn't fully charged up to try to get as much damage as possible. And then the Tesla here, going to be very good against the Battle Ram, of course. So like I said, I do think Tesla's a bit better in bait. So if you guys want my recommendation of if you want to run the Evolved Goblin Barrel, what building, I would highly recommend the Tesla, at least in this current meta. Especially if you decide to use the Evolved Tesla, then 100% Tesla, it's going to be better than the Inferno. Especially because you have the Rocket often in bait, which is a ton of DPS. So in so many matchups, you're not even going to need that Inferno when you can just go for a Rocket on top of a Lava Loon push, for example. Or the Giant in this meta. The Giant's been very strong, and there might be a lot of units clumped together with him, where, of course, the Rocket could come in clutch on top of him, and then the support cards. So Tesla here, take out that Battle Ram, and the Evolved Goblin Barrel is in rotation, so as you can see, it's a little tricky to kind of get value with it. I mean, because when you don't even have a tank in rotation, it's kind of like, should I even play it? It's kind of doesn't seem worth it, because the ability is essentially just going to waste, especially when the Duchess is fully charged up. But as you can see, tank in the right lane, so the decoy gets sent with the tank, and then the regular one in the opposite lane. So that's a great way to use it there. You got to be smart where your tank is down, and you almost always want to play the decoy one with the tank, unless it's a situation where you really need to be committed to one tower. So it kind of shows you it's going to be probably a very strategic evolution. I don't know if I want to necessarily say it's very, very high skill, because I don't know if any evolution, especially because they're stronger than the regular card, is ever going to be considered extremely high skill. But because this is one where you're not getting a stat boost, and instead it's kind of a stat nerf because it's less health, it might call for quite a bit of strategy. But I wonder if this is also going to be the case where it's kind of like the Evolve Ice Spirit, where it's going to be practically useless and may end up requiring a buff. Well, this game is pretty much a wrap. As you guys can see, it's practically useless in other decks besides bait. So if you are going to use it, you got to run it in bait. If you're someone that doesn't like bait, then that is probably a bit unfortunate. And okay, Decoy Barrel finally comes in here, but it's not really going to do anything. It's too little too late. And with that, that's pretty much going to wrap it up for the video here. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Let me know what you guys think of the Evolved Goblin Barrel. Be sure to like the video if you guys enjoyed. Subscribe if you guys are not subscribed already. You can also use creator code BOSS to support me in any Supercell game. And thanks again. Until next time, guys.